Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. My name is Klao Lewis, and I am speaking to you from Kingston, Jamaica, where it is Tuesday, January 17th at 9:01 a.m. This session is held under the auspices of the International Committee of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. CIPR, founded in 1948, is the world's only royal chartered body for public relations professionals. Its work focuses on professional standards, lifelong learning, supporting the careers of our members, and building understanding of public relations. There are several committees which contribute to the functioning of CIPR, and the International Committee supports CIPR's global expansion pillar. This series, Doing PR In, has looked at the practice of public relations in various parts of the world, with our most recent workshops looking at the Middle East and North Africa, as well as Africa. I am pleased to host this session on Doing PR in the Caribbean. I welcome the members of the International Committee, led by Chair Samantha Surensum. Now, thanks to the wealth of experience of our panelists, Collin Cunningham, Shireen Cuthbert, Kendol Morgan, and Valdez Russell, we will today take a sweeping look at public relations practice in three areas and four aspects: government relations, international development, engaging with global firms, and the technical skills required for effectiveness. I invite the panel members to introduce themselves. Valdez, Kendol, Collin, and Shireen regrettably is unable to join us live today, but will contribute via video. Thank you, Paul. Would you each please go ahead and introduce yourselves, starting with Valdez?
There's something extraordinary about coming together to help individuals and organizations to tell their story. It enriches our lives, reshapes our thinking, and helps us to reimagine what is possible through the art of communications and public relations strategies. My name's Valdez Russell, and each day I get to do just that with the individuals and organizations that I serve in my role as principal of VKR Insights, a leading brand reputation management firm in the Bahamas. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you, Valdez. We will now go to Collin.
Hi, good morning all. Thank you very much, Cleo, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Collin Cunningham, and I like to say I'm a journalist who isn't practicing at the moment. That's mostly because I always feel that once you're a journalist, you're always a journalist. I branched out into the field of public relations, communication specialist. That there are a number of labels, of course, that we give to our communication professionals. And I've been lucky to work with one of the leading development organizations in the world, dare I say, but it's based in the Caribbean. And I'm just here for the discussion and to see how we're doing as a practice in the region.
Thank you very much. Kendol might be able to join us live. It's having a little bit of a tech issue, but we do have a recording from him and might play it later. But in the meantime, we'll go to Shireen's introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shireen Cuthbert. I'm a communications specialist. I work in international development, and I'm based in the Caribbean.
Thank you. We will go to Kendol's introduction shortly. All right. Well, we will return to Kendol, and instead we will jump right into the presentations, starting with Valdez. But before we do this, let me say that the practice of public relations is mature within the region, that is within the Caribbean region, and it is also emerging in keeping with other parts of the world. While our region is known for tourism, music, athletics, we have for decades had a thriving industries in banking and finance, manufacturing, mining, agriculture, and are well positioned to move in the trajectories of the blue, green, and orange economies. Our business focus has been on attracting foreign investments and expanding exports. This has meant continual engagement with private, public, and multinational partnerships, and of course, the need for managed communication through public relations. So, supporting this need has been the provision of formal training in communication at several colleges and universities across the region, with the premier university of the West Indies offering up to postgraduate training. I have shared this to give a little insight and to indicate this conversation is set in an environment where professional practice of public relations is recognized as valuable and important across the region by public, private, and civil society sectors. As we proceed to this section, we will hear from the presenters, and I invite you also to place your questions in the chat as we go along, and we will address them after all the presentations have ended. Each presentation should be just about 5 minutes. Thank you once again for joining us. First to the wicket is Valdez Russell.
I remember one of the first times that I was engaged by an international firm, and it was just a happy coincidence. They needed someone to just come in and ask questions of Bahamians to talk about their experiences with certain products. I received the discussion guide with great enthusiasm and read vigorously all of the probes and prompts and key questions that the international partner wanted. And I said, this is crap. And in saying that both out aloud and in my head, the partners realized that I wasn't just there to ask the questions, but to make a meaningful and valuable contributions. In the moment, we were talking about cigarettes, and while it was a topic that I knew very little about, I understood immediately that I knew how to talk to people in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, and with language that resonated in such a way that we could have a better series of focus groups, a better series of call outs, and the delivery and introduction of better products in the region, regardless of its health factors at the time. So here's the truth. International contributors want to be within the Caribbean region. They have a hankering to ensure that their products are not just preferred and sought after for local residents, but also visitors who might want to try the world's finest cigars, the world's most delicious spirits and liqueurs, along with accessing products, goods, and services that are familiar from a culinary side on and with a Caribbean flair. So here's what I remind myself of and recognize consistently on a daily basis. One, when a partner approaches us within the region from an international specter or sector, you want to be sure that you understand the assignment. Understanding the assignment goes deeper than just reviewing, translating, and reevaluating a discussion guide or the strategic approach, but it goes into building the kind of relationship that is long-term, sustainable, and will allow for you to get to the next level. That next level could be another contract. That next level could be a better relationship. That next level could be moving your services from one destination to the next and to the next within our chain of islands and around the region. The second piece that highlights an appetite for collaboration within the Caribbean region by international partners is helping them to appreciate, respect, and understand that there is a cost and a tremendous value to the intellectual capacity that you bring to the table. I'm sure we all struggle with this all the time, knowing our worth and adding tax. But when working with international partners in the Caribbean, sometimes there is an appetite for partners to undercut, undermine, and undervalue what we bring to the table. The best practitioners deliver their services, their products, and goods with a level of polish, with a level of extraordinary precision that reminds all of us that there is a worth to our intellect, there is a cost for our services, and we should not be undermined or undercut because we're from the Caribbean region. The final piece when collaborating with international partners, as there is an appetite and an urgency to be in the region, is to consistently deliver results. Those results look like connecting your clients with others who can elevate and promote their brand. Those results look like being responsive to email communications that help us to keep ideas flowing. Those results look like delivering reports that speak to the international brand, but also focus on how it should be introduced and contextualized within the cultural context. Understand the assignment, know your worth, and deliver results are the main takeaways that I have grown to appreciate are critical when collaborating and engaging with global partners within our region. It helps us to renew, refresh, and reimagine what is possible. And there are so many possibilities when we think about relationships, the assignment, our worth, and delivering results that influence positive and sustainable change. Thank you.
Wow, much to think about. And it's interesting from the perspective of the practitioner within the region, as well as guidance for partners, existing and potential partners from outside of the region. Thank you so very much, Valdez. I appreciate these points. And now we will run over, trying to maintain the cricket analogy, but not very authentically. Richard Collin Cunningham. Over to you, Collin.
Thank you, Klao. Well, of course, one would imagine that back in the day, as you entered into the field of public relations and communications, that the most important thing that you would have to have, most important skill that you would have to have, or most important part of your anatomy is a brain, and then maybe a pencil or pen and a paper. And in some instances, you should know how to operate a recording device, you know, a microphone of some kind. So you walk around with a little tape recorder. Things have changed a whole lot. And whereas in most instances, the communications professional is not required to be a jack of all trades, but I think it's important that they have at least one area or one skill, or at least have an idea of how the skills and what should happen, because you have to deal with a lot of what should we call contractors when you're a PR person. If you need to have a video done, you have to call in a videographer. You need to get photographs, you need to call in a photographer. However, if you have an idea, at least the basic idea of how these skills operate, then you can actually sit with the person and have a discussion with them. Because most instances, And this has actually happened. You hire a photographer and you say, go take some pictures of this project that we're working on because we want to highlight it in our upcoming annual report or something like that. This photographer might be, envisioning himself as being the next discoverer of I don't know, the next top model or something. So he would go around, take pictures of what he thinks are great looks, what he thinks are great images. You come back and you're going through them and you can't find anything that you particularly like. So it's not that you should go out and study to be a photographer, but you should at least have the basic skills that says, okay, when I tell you to take a picture of this, this is the kind of angles that I want. So you can sit down and communicate. Also, one of the roles of a PR person is that you have to put on an event. You have to stage an event. Maybe it's a news conference. Maybe it's some event that the company is having. A lot of internal PR people would hire somebody from outside, an event manager and that sort of thing, and then you want to leave it up to them. But again, you still need to have some of the basic skills, some of the basic understanding, maybe even if not the skills, of how certain things work. Are we going to be able to put the microphone or the lectern where it is for the best possible look? So you have to have some skill of managing an event. Again, in this day and age, there are a lot of tools online that you can resort to. If you want to design a poster, you can go to online and find Canva, and you can create stuff and send it out. But for somebody who is looking at it and who doesn't at least have a basic understanding of how colors work or of how, text and flow and that sort of thing, you could go on Canva and create something and you'd be like, oh, this is wonderful. This is pretty. This is beautiful. We're sending it out. It goes out. It doesn't get the sort of impact that you have and you're wondering why, because of course this looks good. So again, and we started off by talking about the fact that in the Caribbean we have training and that sort of thing. And one of the early training at University of West Indies Mona campus was that they encourage people to grab certain skills, even if you're not going to specialize in them. And that was one of the important things. So you got experience, you went outside, you went out and with a camera and you shot. You didn't want to be a videographer, but you went out, you worked with the camera, you understand what it was like to work with that. So you got that basic understanding of what's happening. And I suppose as we get further and further into technology and there's all these tools available to us online and we can just grab one and use one, or we can just call on somebody to do that for us. We can say, grab somebody who has a drone and take some footage of this, but when it comes back, we look at it and it's not what we want and we have to go out and do it again. So to have those skills, it starts the conversation so that when you're brainstorming, when you're sitting with your team and you're saying, this is what we want to do, this is where we want to go. It is good to have somebody on the team that would be able to make an input into certain areas, so that these skills should be encouraged. As far as I'm concerned, that when you're hiring, you should discuss this with the practitioner. You don't want professionals in specific areas, because then you're gonna, that is not gonna be feasible. But you want to be able to hire people who have the basic skills in photography, in sound, maybe in online streaming. And because again, I will repeat that these facilities are available for the professional now. It's a expanding world. You can go online, like I said, and grab everything. But when you're having that discussion, when you're sitting down with the provider, you should be able to guide them so that you get what you want, and the package, when it's done, is something that you are happy with, because it could then become very costly if you have to keep going back and doing things over, because you didn't have the in-house skills and the in-house experience to be able to guide the professional into giving you what you want. And that's there for now.
Thank you, Collin. Yes, indeed, I agree that some technical skills are key these days, at least understanding what's possible with the range of tools that are available and knowing how to find them. All right, we will now move to Shireen Cuthbert, who will speak to us about her experience in development communications in the region. A recording of her presentation will be played now. Oh, okay.
Sorry, Klao, I've got Kendol.
Yes, thank you. Forgive me. Right. Apologies, audience. We will move to Kendol. Kendol was scheduled to join us live today. However, he has had an emergency situation which he must attend. Thankfully, like good PR folks, we have a backup plan. And we've had recordings from each of the panelists in waiting should there have been such an occurrence. We will now hear from Kendol Morgan by way of his introduction and then his presentation. Thank you.
Good day to all. I'm Kendol Morgan, currently Program Manager for Communications at the Secretariat of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM in Guyana. I've been fortunate to have a career that involved working across most of the Caribbean in journalism and public relations. It has been a very enlightening experience engaging with and observing government communications practitioners undertake what in recent years have become increasingly challenging roles. CARICOM, an intergovernmental body, also communicates on behalf of national governments, which are its members and associate members, 20 in total, and the challenges are multiplied many times over. I think to be effective, government communications must embrace two primary tasks: provide timely information and counter misinformation and disinformation. Both have taken on greater significance in recent times. I think it is important that the communicators encourage and help to foster open and honest conversations between the authorities and the public to help build and maintain public trust. The Caribbean has unfortunately become part of the global trend where there has been the steady erosion of public trust in officialdom and official sources of information. There's a growing belief in some sections of the society that official information is nearly always skewed towards serving some political, business, or other interest. We recently witnessed a huge fight that government communications teams across the Caribbean had on their hands during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic to mobilize the public behind national and global protocols and especially for the promotion of the vaccination campaigns. I was privileged to be part of the Regional Health Communicators Network established by the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, and which operated a WhatsApp group during the period of the pandemic on which the health communicators shared their experiences and drew inspiration and encouragement from each other. I saw the challenge to provide timely information that was accurate, was approved by the policy experts, and was packaged to be appealing and persuasive and to result in desired action. There was a time not so long ago when Caribbean governments were the main gatekeepers of public information, controlling the limited avenues for information dissemination, mainly radio and television, and sometimes the newspapers. This is no longer the case. Citizens during the pandemic were accessing information on COVID-19 and vaccines from sources with no requirement to be factual or honest, and which were often controlled by new gatekeepers who, for likes and shares, were willing to disseminate deliberate misinformation and disinformation. Where public mistrust existed, many citizens openly embraced the misinformation and rejected official positions. What was critical to the success achieved by government communication was segmenting audiences and ensuring that the strategies were segmented accordingly. Messages were honest, and where there were slip-ups, these were openly acknowledged and corrected. Moreover, there was persistence and consistency with the messaging. One further lesson from the combined experiences across the region was that there has to be a clear line between the problems that could be solved by communications versus those that should be solved by policy, especially for those new and big challenges.
How interesting. The question of what can be solved by communication versus policy, or perhaps as well as policy. Thank you very much, Kendall, for that presentation. And now we will hear from Shireen Cuthbert.
In this session, I'll go through 3 major lessons that I've learned over the years that can help to achieve effective stakeholder engagement by international agencies operating in the Caribbean. Lesson 1, go local, think global. Communications for international development spans a wide range of socioeconomic issues. In the Caribbean, these issues are unique to the region and its people, but they also fit into global frameworks such as the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. International development agencies operating in the Caribbean are required to articulate how their work in the region addresses global issues. Effective stakeholder engagement means understanding and applying local context by connecting with stakeholders at national levels to capture how an agency's work is transforming lives, businesses, and communities. However, keep the big picture in mind to demonstrate how the agency is contributing to a better world by bringing global best practices to the Caribbean and promoting the region's success stories internationally. Lesson 2, work closely with experts. Communications for international development relies on the expertise of technical specialists such as economists, social scientists, and program managers. Building working relationships with these experts is vital to understand the core work of agencies and their impact in the Caribbean. Experts can guide how to simplify jargon for the benefit of audiences while ensuring that the content is still technically sound. They can also participate in content development by appearing in videos, media interviews, or providing quotes in press releases. Lesson 3, use data. Numbers matter in international development. They identify problems or gaps faced by people and economies. They also demonstrate impact or success. Using data from an agency and communications materials can give more credibility to key messages. Facts and figures that audiences can understand and relate to will encourage them to champion the agency's work via social media or even take action by informing policy change. Thank you for joining this session, and if you have any questions or would like to find out more about working in international development, please feel free to reach out. You can email me at sfcuthbert@gmail.com, or you can add me on LinkedIn and we can connect there.
Quite interesting. Okay. Thank you once again for that. We appreciated hearing from Shireen. Now we have the Q&A feature as a repository for questions. Would you kindly share any question you have and indicate to whom you'd like the question directed or otherwise in the chat? Well, not the chat, but in the Q&A feature. Okay, so we're seeing here to just about any panelist. What industries have you observed as leading in professional public relations services in the region, and why? What industries have you observed as leading in the public relations services in the region, and why? I suppose what might come to mind are the entertainment and tourism sector. Please share your experiences of that, Valdez, and then Collin.
Certainly. So from where I sit, there are a couple. So the first one actually would include investors who are wanting to be and do business in the Bahamas, understanding skills gaps, understanding how they should show up and engage. So that's the first one, investors wanting to appreciate how they should be doing business here in the Bahamas. The second one, the second grouping would be providers of food products, providers of experiences, providers that are wanting to ensure that their product, their brand is top of mind for consumers. So when we're looking to introduce, let's say, a new coffee brand, when we're looking to introduce a smart application that helps people's lives to be better within the region, those are the kinds of organizations that are showing up. Investors, product providers, food providers, experiences that are being introduced to the environment, into the jurisdiction, and persons wanting to take full advantage of ensuring that their products, goods, and services are top of mind locally and keeping that global brand elevated in all regards.
Thank you. Collin?
So when we think of PR and communications, we think, the number of areas that we sometimes go through as to how it should function. And we talk about strategically, we talk about media relations, we talk about event management. And I agree with Valdez to some extent that brands, maybe like even alcoholic brands, like a new alcoholic beverage is being launched, they go through a whole major campaign and try to, as much as possible, put it at top of mind. Like you said, there's also the tourism industry. In recent times, a lot of them have cottoned on to the idea that locals are tourists too. So internally, I mean in the country, there's a lot of promotions every now and then to try and make sure that people know you can come in and enjoy some of the amenities that the other people who vacation where we live, that you can take part in that too. So they too have also been using it. There is also the area where they should probably be using it more, and Kendol touched on it in his presentation, where he talked about how government had to combat the whole notion of that there were other areas where people could access information. And this has been an area that governments have probably not gotten as how should I say? They have not done as much as they can, because when you look at in the US, for instance, where the press people have a press conference almost every day, where they tell you exactly what is happening. In the Caribbean, you would love to hear from your government when things are happening or when things are not happening. COVID was an example for them to follow it. I remember in Barbados, where I spent most of the COVID, that there was a press conference almost every day. Now, since that is done, as far as I know, because I'm not there now, that is no longer practice. So you find that more of the lifestyle agencies or companies, they do a lot of public relations in terms of promotion and communication, getting their messages out to the public. Government, not so much. And I think they should be one of the areas that really should be into it, because you should get information from your government. People have gone away from thinking that it's just propaganda, it's just PR. Well, PR and propaganda used to be synonymous, but now people are getting more sophisticated and are able to now separate it. Some have gone to the far left and is now taking information, like Kendall say, from sources that are just there to create chaos. But yeah, the lifestyle brands, even party promoters, because before you would have a party promotion for something that is coming up next month, but now they're promoting it maybe a year in advance, and they, having events and trying to create that kind of buzz about it. So those kind of agencies are doing outreaching a lot, making a lot of outreach, but we perhaps have areas where we can, get other institutions and possibly even the top institution of government to get involved in that area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, audience, you have been fantastic, and thank you so much for all the questions which are coming in. We have another question, which is interesting because, just to let you know why it's interesting to me. I'm from Jamaica. Valdez is from the Bahamas. Collin is St. Vincentian Trinidadian. Kendol is from St. Vincent. And Shireen is of Trinidadian parentage, but is Canadian. And that we've all worked across the region and in different countries. So I think we can suitably answer the next question, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges faced by PR practitioners within the Caribbean? Who would like to go first? Go ahead, Valdez. I see that smile.
Oh my goodness. Perfect. But if Collin can prepare to jump in. So I think that Shirley, Samantha, Josephine, Tracy, Travis, persons that are popping questions in are asking some of the most thoughtful questions to date, and I hope that we're able to get to many of them. But the biggest challenge from where I sit, as it relates to a PR practitioner in the region, oftentimes we're not taken as seriously until there is a crisis. And so I consistently show up for my clients well. And when we use social media channels like WhatsApp, which is wildly huge here, when we use Facebook to talk about our everyday comings and goings and opportunities and things to that effect, people see them and they scroll by and they just believe it just goes up. Some magical wand has caused it to happen. When a crisis is brewing, when a crisis is emerging, when there's an opportunity to educate and inform the public, sometimes PR firms, PR specialists aren't the first go-to voice. It's the voices of technocrats and self-proclaimed individuals who are seen as the better champions. So from where I sit, doing quality work consistently is critical because it elevates our audiences in understanding that while all social media channels are important, the source is critical because it's accurate, it's timely, and it's trusted. And so helping your client, helping your audience to understand this is where you come to for content, this is where you come to for accuracy, because there's a professional doing the work well, is important so that when something does happen, we're like CNN or Al Jazeera or the BBC, a trusted source for content and information.
I
agree.
Go ahead, Collin, if you'd like to add more.
Yeah, I certainly agree with him. I would go further to say that sometimes even in crisis, the PR person is not consulted, except to the extent that they are now required to put the message out or try to send out a message. Sometimes even that message is not, the PR person is not involved in crafting the message, because it is probably getting better, but it's been this trend to have the PR person just below the, what they call in the US, the C-suite, just below the decision making. So when it comes to strategizing, when it comes to planning a strategy, the top managers sit back and they try to plan a strategy, and then they call in the PR person and say, okay, write this press release saying this, or send out this, or call one of your contacts. Sometimes even the message is written for you and it is given to you, and now you have to send it out to your contacts in and then you look at it and you decide, in your mind you're thinking, this is not going to help, but you've been given a directive to send that out. So that is one of the issues. I think it is getting better. I want to hope that it is getting better. That one of the places that we worked together, Klao, they're now going to bring the head of, I understand that they're now going to bring the head of PR into that top management area. It's not happened as yet, but I'm hoping that more companies in the Caribbean have that when they're having strategy meeting, that PR is involved, and not only to send out a press release or call your contact, because in the Caribbean, everybody knows everybody. Valdez would know somebody in the media, so you would call them up and say, boy, that story you're going to publish, maybe we could. And for the most part, it helps. But as he's saying now that there's all these sources that are going around, by the time, you might have a disgruntled employee, he calls a friend in the media and says, this is what is happening. Before you can stop it, it's already out. And then you're playing catch up, but you're not playing catch up with the right strategies because you're not involved in it. And you're just sitting there waiting to get a call from management to say, this is what we want you to do. So that is an area that I think we need to have better in the Caribbean, is that the PR person is involved in strategy and isn't as seen as a, top management kind of thing.
I think Collin and Valdez, our colleagues across the world, would say the same thing. There is an unevenness, and the leading organizations do understand the value of public relations, professional public relations, and do have persons well placed, even if not by position. You might find often still reporting or having line to or access to the CEO, general manager, or the C-suite. But in terms of challenge, one of the things I would like to see are more organized groups. This is one of the reasons I joined the CIPR, so that we might have a professional body for learning and growing collectively. But within the region, I wish we had stronger groups so we could lend our voices to the development conversations, to put some context and framing to some discussions which are nationally being debated. For example, in Jamaica, while this is not specifically only a PR matter, there was recently signage placed in a part of the country, and the cost of the signage created a big uproar. Now, when I looked across the world, just my own personal observation, there are many places which had signs. It's a big tourist pull. You want to take a picture next to the sign. And the cost of the sign, to me personally, and I don't know if there are any Jamaicans on board, hello, this is not about politics, was not very expensive. It was in fact in keeping with what I understand to be the cost of these things. And I wish we had bodies which could, add to that discussion without appearing partisan. So we will move on. Thank you for that question, Shirley. To Josephine's question, Josephine has asked, what is your advice for someone who wants to get a message across the entire Caribbean, example for a service, product, or global initiative that needs traction? Are there effective Caribbean-wide media companies that could help? Or is it better to approach country by country, though I assume this will be more expensive and complicated? Valdez, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So Josephine, I'm going to try something, and I'm going to say, what's a guan on? And then I'm going to add in there, boy, what you saying? And then I'm going to say, hello, Josephine. Those are 3 different greetings from 3 different places within the Caribbean and around the world.
And of course, there's the French and the Dutch and the Spanish, okay?
Yes, right. Yes.
And the Papiamento and the others.
Right. And if I had the intellectual capacity to deliver those languages, I would. but I highlight that to say that each environment, each community has a different form of engagement and language that, while is acceptable for all of us to appreciate, it's respectful to be considering how do we interact with each jurisdiction. This is what I would say. The Caribbean is so well connected that if you identify someone on one and within one island nation, it is very likely that they're going to know how to get you connected with the best providers in other jurisdictions. And so the kicker is to go back to where I started. Look at the importance of relationships. And so by virtue of being in this space, Josephine, your first connection should be to Klao, who will then reach out to Collin, who will then reach out to Valdez, who will then reach out to Jacob, who will reach out to Samantha and others within the region. And what you have is a core person who is going to ensure that the best and brightest minds are coming together. And if they can't deliver that connectivity to promote your products and goods and global initiatives around the region, you find someone who can, because that is how things happen within the region. Yes, you can find someone who is going to be purporting that they are the Caribbean leader for getting a message out. But what in fact is happening is they're picking up the phone and calling a partner or a colleague or someone else within the jurisdiction. Save yourself the headache, the heartache, and the troubles. Make one call to someone you trust that is within the region, and I can guarantee that the rest will happen flawlessly and seamlessly.
Thank you. Collin?
I agree, Valdez, with that part about, and I'm going to drop one of the buzzwords here, networking, because sometimes when people talk about networking, they don't think about the other person's network. Because you'd say, okay, I'm networking, I'm talking to Klao, I'm talking to Valdez, but Valdez has his own network too, and Klao has her own network too. And that certainly in this instance is perhaps the best way of getting something across the Caribbean. Because I'm going to go historically now, because I also had the pleasure of working with what was supposed to have been a regional media institution, the Caribbean News Agency, which then became CMC, which to me is one of the areas where the governments of the region really dropped the ball in terms of having a connected Caribbean in terms of media and communications and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, the whole setup wasn't guaranteed for success. And even though I think CMC is still around, and I think they still have a channel that is available on some networks in the region, and they will tell you that they reach the entire region, but you know, that is questionable. I think that's where they dropped the ball, the governments in the region, and the way that they set it up. It was not a government setup. So I don't want to say that I'm blaming them for messing it up, but I think that they should have gotten involved just like they did with CARICOM. They should have gotten involved with CMC and with CANA and made sure that it had a plan that worked. I can't go into the whole details now because we don't have the time, but that is something that I feel very passionately about, and I think that could have worked for the region. There was correspondence all around the region at one time, but of course, money makes the mill run, and it wasn't set up in a way that would allow it to generate a lot of money. It was owned by the companies that it was actually selling products to. So it's like, I am selling products to Klao, but Klao owns the product that I am making. Basically, then Klao is going to say, I'm not paying for that because basically I own it. And that was basically what caused the demise of, in a nutshell, the Caribbean News Agency. So there's no one place like Valdez says, there's no one place you can go and say, all right, we're going to reach the entire region. Because even with CMC and Kana, they sell products to, let's say, ZIZ in the Bahamas. ZIZ is going to say, I am putting this at a time when I feel I can put it. So they're going to put it at midnight. Nobody's up at midnight. So you've paid money to get your stuff advertised, and it's in ZIZ and it's in Barbados and it's in Trinidad. But it's being aired at a time when the people who are likely to purchase your product or likely to get involved with your scene, they're fast asleep or they're doing something else. So there's no one place, but you should, like Valdez suggests, try to tap into other people's network. Try to find somebody who knows somebody. Like the Americans say, I got a guy. And that should help.
Well, also there are tools, the PR Newswire and Cision services also do service the region, and we have used those at times. But you know, as in everything else, just the currency of it, given the changing nature of the landscape and the people, and particularly because so many media houses are moving to contract work and freelancing. You know, both all these agencies really must stay on top of their list. Now, any worthwhile practitioner will also maintain their own list, and of course, not a list, but genuine, authentic, and respectful relationships. So if you are going to do business in the Caribbean, that investment of time must be made in understanding the landscape and building the partnerships. Thank you both very much, and audience, you're fantastic. I do appreciate all the questions which are coming through. Let's answer Travis. With the absence of a repository for Caribbean PR data, how do we help ambitious organizations to develop a greater appreciation for the role of PR in their growth? With the absence of a repository of Caribbean PR data, how do we help ambitious organizations develop a greater appreciation for the role of PR in their growth? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Valdez.
Yeah, so I think Travis has asked some very good questions. One, he wanted to talk about creative best practices, and two, he delivers us this very strong question about the absence of something that I believe that PR strategist and communication strategist can attend to. So the first one is, when you interact with a client, you should be going in with data. And that data can be reflected in the fact that as a part of this branding, marketing, communication exercise, we need to ask these questions so that we add to the absence of something that we need to be addressing. Secondly, when you look at questionnaires that are out there, when you look at focus groups, when you look at all of the different ways that you're collecting data, you as a practitioner are contributing to better decision-making around media usage, media consumption best practices. The data is out there. We are building it slowly and incrementally. We are not sharing it. And so we have an increased responsibility to say to our clients, to say to organizations, instead of speaking hypothetically or anecdotally, let's ask better questions when we manage a focus group process. Let's call out, let's get these SurveyMonkey engagements supported with incentives that help people to give us access to better data. And so, Travis, you're a part of the change. And that change has to look like asking good questions. Even if you start with 30 people and build to 300 people and build to 3,000 people, it creates a body of information that you now have that elevates your services to other clients when you're able to say, this percentage of the population is using social media. This percentage of the population is accessing print media. This percentage of the population is watching the nightly news. While those simple questions in small quantities might not seem as powerful, your role is elevated when you walk into a conversation and say, based on research that I've facilitated, this is what we know. This is why I think that we should have a stronger social presence rather than a print presence, because 52% of the population is here versus there, etc. So ask better questions, contribute to the gathering of data, and make things happen so that the Caribbean region stands out by your expertise and is not stifled by the absence of data.
Yeah, once once a problem has been identified, I guess the next step is trying to figure out how to solve it. And I suppose there is that a lot of legwork to be done, as Valdez says, where you start building that data yourself. But importantly, after you build that data, is then finding a way to make it available to others. So, and this is where I guess a difficulty might come in, because some people might say, well, it was my work. Why would I just give it up for everybody else? But we have to start thinking global, I suppose. And when I say global, I don't even mean like global, like in the entirety of the world, but in the entirety of, let's say, the Bahamas or Jamaica. So even if you charge a fee for it, you should say to someone, okay, we have all this data, you can access it, you can pay this fee, you can have it. Similarly, if you build up data yourself too and we need it, we will come to you and we can access it. Sometimes it happens with colleagues, because if I have some information and Klao wants it, and now that I know Valdez and he wants it, and he called me and he say, hey, Collin, what's the situation with this here? And I would share it with him and that sort of thing. But it's not out there. And the trend lately is to make things proprietary, and that is okay too. But let's also find a way to make sure that people can access it. And if everyone start building that data, like Valdez says, everyone start asking those questions and building that data and not keep it hidden, make sure that other people can access it. Maybe the next time we gather like this, we'll be talking about that repository and not the absence of it. But it begins with the first step, and maybe, I don't know who's going to take that first step, but we know that there's an issue. So next thing is, how do we work in it? But it's to collect it, collation, and then to make it shareable in whatever way we want, for a fee, for free, whatever.
Thank you very much. Well, it is now 2 minutes to 10. Audience, if you'll allow us until 5 minutes after, we will answer one more question, and then we will invite our chair to just speak for a minute about CIPR and mention some activities pertaining to the 75th, and then we will wrap. I really do appreciate the engagement. Thank you for the feedback, Josephine, that the question you asked and our response really resonates with you there in the Pacific. Now, we see that Kendol has joined, but I know he's still fighting fire, so he just wanted to have a presence today. And we do acknowledge and appreciate you, Kendol, for joining and for having sent your videos ahead along with the other contributors. Collin, I'd like you to answer this question, please. What are the key differences in the way audiences consume information in the Caribbean region when compared to Western cultures? For example, what role does social media, influencers, TV, radio, newspapers, word of mouth play in the way that people connect with brands and causes? And you have just about a minute to respond to that.
Okay, so in the Caribbean, the biggest thing that has crept into how people consume media is Facebook and WhatsApp. WhatsApp is surprisingly, in a visit to North America, WhatsApp is not as big as it is in the Caribbean, and I don't understand why it became such a thing. It could have been because of the tariffs for regular phone calls and text messages and that sort of thing. But WhatsApp became quite a way of consuming information. And so you would find that most people, that's how they share information. So they probably go to Facebook and they find something. They call it research. Then they share it instantly by WhatsApp. And before you know it, everybody in the country is now reading that, and then there's responses, and then there more information being spread. So I think that, in my 1 minute, maybe Facebook and WhatsApp have become the key ways now, because they're no longer before, like we would go to the radio, we would listen, we'd know every time the news was coming on, or we would buy a newspaper. That is no longer the way that people are consuming. Social media, Facebook, most likely. Now TikTok, which is being banned, is now spreading a whole lot of information, some good, some not so good. And then WhatsApp. That's how it's spread all around, because you may not have seen it on TikTok, but you would definitely get a WhatsApp link to TikTok sooner or later in the Caribbean, which is, I guess, it's not as big in North America, WhatsApp circulation.
Thank you. Just to add that the Caribbean is very, very westernized. So, and particularly very aligned with the US. So trends there tend to reflect, trends here tend to reflect trends there. And social media, because of the way we're able to access it using internet Wi-Fi data, which is less than using the rates for phone calls, etc. The changes in how we consume radio, social media is definitely a very big way. And for public relations practitioners, it's a must because we can measure it, but also that's where the audiences are. And we do consume the gamut. With the older population using Facebook, younger being IG and TikTok. But for Jamaica and perhaps other countries, but for Jamaica, the nightly primetime news is the hotspot. So if you want to reach people, you must spend the big bucks to advertise at 7 p.m. every evening on television. All right, I'm delighted to bring in our chair, Samantha Sirosaran, who will speak to us.
Well, thank you very much, Klao, for this wonderful session. It's been extremely insightful, and I'd really like to thank Valdez, Kendol, and everyone who's been part of this session. Collin, it's been absolutely great. So thank you for all for sharing your insights. As Klao has mentioned, I'm the chair of the CIPR International Group. So our main focus is on sharing knowledge and best practice around the globe. So this great session has actually been our first one of the year, but we'll be planning more events for the coming months. And this is a particularly exciting year for the Chartered Institute of Public Relations because it is also our 75th anniversary. So both from the CIPR headquarters in London and for those of us across the globe, we're really looking forward to a very varied and interesting agenda for the months to come. So I'd say if you're not already a member of CIPR, we'd love to have you with us. So do check out our website, which is at cipr.co.uk. And for international activities, you can also follow us on LinkedIn. So we have the CIPR International Group page where all of our events are going to be posted. Many of them are also going to be free as well for non-members. But I'd say if you're not a member, then please come on board. It's a great year to be with us. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for today's session, which has been absolutely great, and look forward to seeing you all on another webinar very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so very much, Samantha, for your support and leadership, and really the one who pushed us to ensure that this happened. We do appreciate it. And now all that's left is for me to thank everyone who has been so key to ensuring the success of this event. Shirley, Kalia, Eva McLean, Alessandro, Margarita and Ferdinand from the International Committee, and Paul and Maha from the CIPR HQ, and of course, Samantha. And you, our audience, for making the time to be here, even though it's all kinds of hours in the various parts of the world where you are. When we last checked, there were 13 different countries, and it has been a delight. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care of yourself, or rest of the night. Bye-bye. Panelists, please remain online for a quick photo.